Okay, hi everybody. Thank you so much for coming. We're gonna go ahead and get started. Um, this is really cool. I actually haven't hosted a live event in a very long time. I've been doing a lot of Zoom events, so this is like it's like different. I can hear people. But so yeah, thank you all here for being in person, and then thank you also all of the wonderful people that are joining us virtually. It's really great that we have the ability now to not only do these events in person with a live audience, but also doing them, virtually, so that people from all over the world can join, and also people who are not, comfortable because of COVID to come and be in person. So yeah, I'm excited that we're doing this. So my name is Karo, and I am the library manager here at the Sims Library of Poetry, which is where we're at to honor Indigenous People Day, which is on Monday, and we have three really fabulous Indigenous poets here for you today to read for you. And I just want to remind everybody that the genocide that happened on this land it happened hundreds of years ago, but it is something that is still ongoing. And this is evidenced in the pipelines that have been built on sacred land, and so that fight is still definitely very much ongoing. We all need to be a part of that, and also that Indigenous folks are not part of our past either. They're here, they're here, and so a lot of times I think people forget that, and I think we need to remind that their traditions, their blood are very much here, and they're part of of us. And so we're here today to honor that. And so I just wanted to talk also a little bit about the library. So we are the first Black-owned poetry library in the state of California. Yeah, thank you. um, and we aim to form and appreciate poetry. And we have all around us, we have over 5,000 books of poetry, and they're local poets, they're well-known poets. People have donated books to us from all over and helped us grow this library. The Sims Library Poetry is part of a larger organization called the Community Literature Initiative that offers various classes and programs. And so yeah, we offer a lot of services for the community, and a lot of people here are here today because of Community Literature Initiative. And another thing that we just started doing that I wanted to plug real quick is we started a level 1 poetry class for people who may not have time to commit to going to class every week, or may not want to be on the routes, or may not be ready to publish a book, but who still want to learn poetry. And so we just started this month a poetry class that meets every first and third Saturday of the month at 10 a.m. And basically, yeah, we're just going over some basic introductory concepts of poetry, and then giving the space for people to write. So if this is something that interests you, you can go to our website and find out more about that and sign up. And you would be the class is there's two classes a month, and they're $44 for the month. And you'll be donating that $44 to the not only for the class, but you'll be donating it to become a member of the library and basically help support us, help us pay rent and the bills, and the staffing, and help us put on events like this. And so we appreciate your support. And then even if you just want to drop us like $5 on our PayPal, we would appreciate that as well. And say about and we're gonna go ahead and dive into the reading. Our first poet is gonna be Iván Salinas, who was born. Okay, who was born in Ciudad de Mexico and immigrated to Los Angeles when he was 10 years old to reunite with his family. He received a BA in English, and a BA in English Creative Writing from from California State University, Northridge, where he was a student organizer advocating for quality of education that addresses racism and social justice. Appeared in Backlash Lit, Curious Publishing, Dryland, and Drifter Zine. Iván is a 2021-22 Poetry Coalition Fellow at Beyond Baroque. He currently resides in the San Fernando Valley. So everyone, let's give Ivan a warm welcome.
Hola, buenas tardes, everyone. Thank you so much from Karo, poet, to Briana for putting this together. Really, it's an honor standing here today and share la palabra with so many amazing poetas, maestres. As Caro said, um, I was born in Tenochtitlan in Ciudad Mexico, and there I have been not have been able to go back to Mexico for the past 13 years. Living here in estado de refugio de como inmigrante has been a journey, and as a estudiante, I have been trying to reconnect with my ancestry and explore it more through my poetry. So I would like to share a few poems on people say. So this first poem is called Valles. As you know, Tenochtitlan es el ombligo de la luna. It's there that also I was born, and having come here, living in San Fernando, and it is coming from one valley to the other. And this poem is dedicated to that. Valles. I come from another valley where Aztec ruins float over crowded lakes, and terrified poor students flee far away to land in corrupted sanctuaries worshipped every day, in between dried up barrios where natives work, in warehouses and in supermarkets. Oranges are the only fruit. I thought I left my valley behind. But did I ever leave? I still thirst during your droughts, when my apartment sits on fire in September, and I'm still not independent. From your white picket fences, I can imagine my social security arriving in a mailbox of another valley and will never be. Thank you. This next poem is a poem dedicated to nacimientos. Um, it is a poem titled Mixutlan, which means place of birth. And I'd first like to read it in Spanish. My parents are actually here. Mamá y papá. Bienvenidos. Yeah. So I'd first like to read it in Spanish, and then I can do the translation. Mixutlan. Mamá nació en una ciudad de poetas. Creció con libros bilingües que terminaron en la basura porque las palabras no siempre dan para comer. Nesa, madre tierra, nombrada en memoria de un coyote en ayunas, príncipe sin trono en fuga, refugiado en cantos, para liberar a un pueblo que lo han de nombrar Tlatoani. Mamá dio luz a un poeta que no supo cómo nacer. Los doctores tuvieron que rescatarlo de su propio ahorcamiento para que recitara su primer canto de lamento y sacudiera todo el lago de Texcoco. Nacido en Xochican, lugar de las flores, Mixutlan, lejos las tajillas de mi abuelo, amor de mi abuela que reza por un poeta en Aztlán todos los días. Ángel de las casitas de caña, arraigado a la vida entre soles, de por aquí y de por allá. Gracias. Paso Kamati. Here's in English. Mama was born in a city of poets. She grew up with bilingual books that ended up in the trash because words don't always feed you. Memory of a starving coyote, prince without throne on the run, refugee in songs to free the people that were to name him Atlatuani. Mom gave birth to a poet who did not know how to be born. Doctors had to rescue him from his own hanging so that he would recite his first song of lament and shake the entire Mishutlan. Far from my roots, I seek to kiss the stones again, my grandfather's cheeks, love of my grandmother who prays for a poet in Aztlan every angel in the reed houses, rooted to life, between suns here, between suns there. Plaza Comati. Another little detail that Karo shared is as a student in Cal State University, there I was introduced to professors and this identity as Chicanx that I have really embraced. I grew up confronted la frontera que nos cruzó, having been in the space where I'm surrounded by history, by professors that are also Chicanx and that fought for a place to be in higher education. There I became more of an organizer, more involved in student groups that advocated for ethnic studies overall. And we have been able to grant ethnic studies in college in the state of California as a requirement. High schools. So those are really big accomplishments that students and professors have really pushed through. And at the same time, having been there, it has also been a way to confront white supremacy. And I would like to read this poem that details some of those 4 years through poetry in the best way I could. This one's titled Momachtiani, word for estudiante, student. Momachtiani. Nomasi late at the Cal State Calmeca, the classroom door is closed. English only. Ni modo, me quedo afuera. Ni notlalia donde se pueda. Leo en silencio in a hallway under surveillance. Daydreaming of summer break, I'm missing out on lectures of white noise I've heard 1,000 times before. Tomorrow's the final and I'm ditching it for a better trip. Profe inundado en papeleo. ¿Cuántas más? Feliz next to the sea. A student runs out of class en llanto and I enter mid-lecture. La profe asks me for a valid excuse y le digo, no encontré parking. She doesn't believe me. Her PhD trained her to smell anís tlacatini. She points me to the door and continues her post-colonial lecture. Stepping on Sesevitzum ground, I walk out to seek a spot and kill some time with smoke. Nopal inquieto. Deambulo los pasillos en el atardecer y me vuelvo amigo de patos y tortugas. Cargo mochila llena de amochtli, hojas en blanco rellenadas con tinta negra that make up strange words, mere scribbles to monolingual tongues. My thesis, clutter Roman letters and white pages till they die in each other's breath. Espíritus de momachtianis desaparecidos por el Estado piden muerte al matador. Tu jeta imperialista plasmada en mercadotecnia nos persigue en la red escolar. Mascota patriarcal, símbolo español, macho violador, once a bull killer. Rosas en tu memoria, y ninguna rosa es para los acribillados por tu espada. Momachtiani of the untenured Lamatinime. 4 years and a half, I did my time. For a BA in Creative Bowl, due in my mailbox sometime soon. Once at Lamikti, always at Lamikti. Momachtiani, dreaming on Amat. Unchain my throat, I speak in tongues. Claso Kamati. This last poem is in tribute to one of my favorite poetas, um, actually published by the Chucha Press um, in 2006, I think. Chicano poeta, professor that also dealt with racism in higher education. Um, this poem that I want to read is his first canto that details um, the colonization, the moment that um, we have the clash between Europeans and indigenous peoples, and that herida, that memory that is still alive. He immortalizes it in his first canto. So I'd like to close this my reading with this poem. Primero, arrival. First, the island, the cross of truth, another island, a continent, a line half water, half metal, an island of birds, Koyanan, an island of birds, Koyanan Pachacutec, sounds above an island, in the air, trees, Koyanan Pachacutec, female sounds, Rikuy and Sakunak, Yawar. Imagine the sounds, the air, the trees, at times the silence, the slither and thorns, so perfect a shape, right angles, the globe yields to so straight line. Look, one line, zenith to nadir, heaven precipitation, the only other straighter still than the horizon we see at sea, perfect, paradise. That horizontal line from old to new, he knew would yield. Yes, so perfect the move, he knew, yes, so perfect the shape, yes. Trees caught his thoughts. Birds and onshores brought them from the boats. She knew those thoughts, heard those songs. Could there be one more island? Birds, sounds, perhaps pearls, gold? Eden, Wanahini, perhaps another. Oh, my marina, my newfound island. License my roving hands and let them go before, behind, between, above, below, west. Feminine, first name, continent named for him, America. Here, Santa Fe. Here, the true faith. I claim in the name of the Father, land of thorns, in the name of the Son. The edge of this world and the other is marked in water, ocean, river. Wave to her. She waits on the other side. Aquí se llama la Juana de apellido Juárez, India, prieta y chaparra, la que le encanta al gringo, al gachupín, island of cactus, genius, Cuauhtémoc, island of rose, land of thorns, Pedro de Alvarado, an eagle, La Región Transparente, a night of smoke, Marina, night gear, an ocean contained in one woman as it was in the beginning, world without end, fallen eagle. So feminine a shape, so female a bay, another shape, gliding birds, another touching trees. True name of woman, Vera Cruz. Body of woman. He named me Xochitepec. Yes, so we are all flowers of the mountain, all a woman's body. That was one true thing he said in his life. Above birds, leaves. Above so form, as 15 letras, not the 7 words, contestó Malintzin. Yes, I said. Yes, I will. Yes. En el nombre de la Virgen de las Espinas, ella que en buen hora nazco, this archaeology is born here, tibia. Here, ball courts, codices, teeth. Inside, the caves are painted. Here, an architecture. Sí, toco, toco, tocotín. Playa Tamuica, Totlazo Suapili, Macamo, Tonantzin, Tiquechemolcahuilis, Mati Tlato, Illo, Huel Nimachicauac, Noteco, Quimati. En la sangre, en las espinas de la Virgen de Santa Fe, these names are written. América, Estados Unidos, México. I name her, flower of the mountain. Cuautepec, Cihuatepec, Huicatepec, amor silvestre, terra nova, cuerpo de mujer. The edge of this world and the other is marked in metal. On this side, America. On this side, America. Nights, they spill from San Diego and Los Angeles, threading the steel mesh como nada. los verdaderos alambristas, buscando el cuerpo de mujer, buscando Xochitepec. Plazo Camanti.
Hi, everybody. So I just want to apologize to everyone virtually because I know we've been having some internet issues. I tried moving the little like Wi-Fi thing, so hopefully that makes it a little bit better. But other than that, if you are on the Wi-Fi network here, if you could please disconnect, um, just so that we're not putting any more strain on the Wi-Fi than has already been happening. So that's one thing we're gonna ask everybody to do. But hopefully, yeah, I also moved like a little router, so and so we're gonna go ahead and move on. And if there is any issues, we're gonna try to you can let us know through the chat, and we'll troubleshoot it here. Um, so up next is Buchanan. I'm really excited this year with us today. She's gonna be joining us virtually. So I'm gonna go ahead and read. Institute for Humanities Fellow and a Department of Cultural Affairs, City of Los Angeles, Master Artist Fellow, Shonda Buchanan is the author of 5 books, including the award-winning memoir, Black Indian, which is actually on our shelves. Yes, Sandra is holding it up in the back. An award-winning poet, fiction, nonfiction writer, and educator, Shonda is a recipient of a Brody Arts Fellowship from the California Reed Grant from the National Endowment for Arts, several Virginia Foundation for the Humanities grants, the Denise L. Scott Frank Sullivan Awards, and a Louise Klein Healy Scholarship. Shonda is also a Sundance Institute Writing Arts Fellow, a Penn Center Emerging Voices Fellow, and a Gentle Artist Residency Fellow. By PBS News Average of People, Communities Escape and Loss. Her first collection of poetry, Who's Afraid of Black Indians, was nominated for this of the American Association and the Library of Virginia Book Awards. So here is Shonda. Just give us a second because we're going to move the TV so y'all can see here in person. And then we're just going to move the spotlight on Zoom. So.
Hi, everyone. I'm so grateful. Can everyone hear me? Hello. Yes, you all are amazing to make this happen virtually as well. I'm incredibly grateful to be a part of this reading. Thank you for honoring our Indigenous ancestry and heritage, with this reading Sims Library. Thank you for asking me to be a part of it. Yay, I'm so glad you guys can hear me. And I hope the lag doesn't, impact my poems too badly. But I'm just so grateful to read with this amazing roster of poets and my amazing friend, Luis Rodríguez. I'm so grateful that you're here as well reading. So without further ado, I want to start with, one of the ways that I start songs, or rather start readings, is with a song. And particularly, I want to honor those children's graves, the children who have been found and those children who have not been found, with this Shumash Children's Honoring Song. And then once I finish the song, I'll go into a poem that talks about my family heritage. So I learned this song in a sweat lodge in the California mountains. And this rattle was made for me by Bonnie Rodríguez, one of the women who helped me on my journey on that red road. So I'm going to sing this song, children's, a Chumash children's honoring song. And I'll sing just a little bit of it, and then I'll start my reading. We ya 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 yo, we ya ya yo, we ya ya yo, we yo, we yo, we ya hey yo. We ha ya ya yo, we ha ya ya yo, we ha ya ya yo, we ha yo, we ha yo, we ya hey yo, ya ya ya, we ha ya ya yo, we ha ya ya yo, we ha ya ya yo, we ha yo, we ha yo, we hey ya hey yo. Black Indians. All my journeys began in North Carolina without my knowing it. Black Indians pushed like September crab shells on an angry winter shore, swept up in the storm of Moby Dick's adventure. The literature of us wiped and creamed against an outcrop of colonizing rocks, our acorn, our buckskin, our dreaming crushed, no corrected, under the weight of change. We became husks of ourselves. We were Nusiyuk, Indians fading into Kahari ghosts on a riverbank. We were red-black wolves chewing our wrists from the arm. We fought next to the Tuscarora, beating ourselves into a story of lush rivers and swampland and defeat, unaware of the coming. Saddles and horses and silver in white mouths, sweeping us up in their fingers like dust in the corner of black powder pouches. We ran. My family escaped from that swampland in Sampson County into Tennessee, then Indiana, and then hush your mouth, Michigan. Indian, mulatto, colored, black. What were we? We planted ourselves next to the Potawatomi and the Odawa like corn stalks, and we grew into a farmhouse on fire. So that first poem essentially is the journey that my family took from North Carolina and Virginia across the country, trying to find safe spaces and safe havens for mixed bloods. Those of us who had either married or married into American Indian communities, and they married into African communities. And, but being a mixed blood, you kind of had to make your living the way, however you could make your living. And then also, try to go to a place that was safe for you. Many things happen. I write a lot about this in my memoir, Black Indian, and I'm so grateful that my memoir is in the Sims Poetry Library. That's just awesome. So the next poem that I'm going to read is a poem called The Five Civilized Tribes, because the five civilized tribes who did try to assimilate into European ways by cutting their hair and wearing Western clothing, one of the very terrible ways that they assimilated was they started owning slaves. And so this poem speaks for that. And I say my epigraph is in the 1800s, during Indian removal, those five civilized tribes adopted colonial ways and owned Black slaves so that their white neighbors could feel safer. And they were all eventually put on the Trail of Tears, those 5 civilized tribes and their slaves. And here's the poem. Poets, correct the history books. Those tribes that held my sable-palmed mothers by our throats, with 5 fingers given to them by Andrew Jackson, 5 hands soiled by the myth of a wild West, 5 legs of bullets, straw and pine, no feathers or horses, no buffalo heart, 5 very different notions of smoke and lodge and breeding than they began with on that long walk. Creek, Chickasaw, Cherokee, Choctaw, Seminole. Over 60,000 forced into an Oklahoma shoebox, 4,000 crumbling on the way. How many were we? Black and Indian, their slaves, their lovers, their wives, their half-breed children, their slaves. We, cassava heartbreak singing to a wolf moon. We, deranged fallen seed, corn husks and silt in our hair. They all look the same to us. We all look the same. If this is civilized, let us be the savages. If these are my cousins, my brothers walking over my grave, I'll be the barbarian. So that poem comes from a place of just kind of not understanding how, not all of them, because a lot of Black and American Indian intersections were peaceful or were about resilience and survival and helping each other. But then there were times when, like the 5 civilized tribes owning slaves, that it became contentious and owning us like chattel slaves, owning Black people like chattel slaves, and owning sometimes their own relatives, you know, in a not great way. And that's an understatement, underwhelming statement. But I wrote this book, Who's Afraid of Black Indians, because I wanted to talk about those intersections historically and in my family of what it meant to be Black and Indian. And this is a poem for my grandfather who, because he had the ability to be a chameleon, to be a racial chameleon, he did. And I, of course, was never able to ask, he's a great grandfather, but I was never able to ask him why. But this is one of the reasons we write poems, right? We write poems to attempt to answer the questions that we do not know, particularly about our family and about the past. This one is called Traces. Since 1830, every year on the census, my 3rd great grandfather disappeared in his skin. First Indian, then mulatto in 1840. In 1850, he was eventually white. What were we? My 4th great grandfather could have left an easier trail to follow, one of cornbread, drum songs, splintered wagon wheels, anything to locate their breath on the ravaged air, the scent of pokeweed, unpicked cotton, something to wet my finger and test the wind of a 344-year silence, all the way back to North Carolina and Virginia. A golden, porous map of some kind, deerbone, horseshoe, something that told us women how to interpret the dreams we had, dreams that scared the mess out of us when dead people came to call, when the crystal future unfolded like a horror movie in our dreary heads. But we knew them, the ghosts folding air-dried sheets, clipping wooden pins off a clothing line, walking away with a full basket of my grandfather's wet, white bones into mist, into shadow. We will never find him. So I'm just going to read 2 more poems. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. The last poem, sorry, the second to last poem I want to read is a poem for my mom. And from this book, oh, I have to also say that my book, the Who's Afraid of Black Indians, I do have copies if anyone wants to buy copies, but I also have an audiobook where a Bantu audiobook, and I'm actually singing some songs in between the poems. So if you wanted to get that audiobook, I think it's like $5, which is so cool. And I'm really grateful to Ubuntu for choosing that, my book, to do an audiobook for. So I'm gonna sing, I'm gonna start this poem with a grass dance song. So I'm a women's traditional dancer. I haven't danced, because of COVID. So that's what, almost 2 years. And I really miss the powwow circuit. But when I was doing the powwow circuit regularly, I learned a lot of songs. I was really grateful to learn a lot from people. One of the songs that I learned singing on an American Indian drum is a grass dance song. And what happens with the grass dance, for those of you who maybe there's some folks who dance powwow out there or have been to a powwow, but when they call for the grass dancers to come into the arena, their regalia is so beautiful, and they've got these like little twisters that they twist, and they're dancing and whatnot, and they've got those big bustle, like the big head regalia and the bustles. And the story behind that is that they were the ones that they called, in the high plains to dance the grass down for the season, and to dance it down so they could have family gatherings, right? And so that's what the grass dance comes from. That's the term grass dance. So the poem is called "My Mother Was a Grass Dancer," and I'm going to sing a little bit of the grass dance song. Way ya, yeah, way ya, yeah, way yeah, way ya, hey, oh, yeah, way yeah. And the women, when we sing, we get like kind of high. So I hope this doesn't break the internet. Way ya, way ya, way ya, way ya, way ya, hey ya, way ya, go way high, way ya, go way high, yeah, way high, way ya, way ya, hey ya, hey yo. Sharp scent, cold blades slipped past my legs as I ran in our yard on Southworth Terrace. I was 6 or 7. That summer, Mama let the grass grow tall as me, 3 or 4 feet, and someone called the city on us, but she didn't care. It reminded her of the country and childhood, of her father in the cornfields where she deposited her secrets in until growing up happened against her like a rock. And then we came, and the cutting of the grass followed. As a child, through the universe of green, I slid and squealed, and that day the grass cutting turned into a night of cigarette tips glowing against the witch-kissed, smothered blue-black night. I thought maybe I heard drums as I ran behind my brothers, cutting and cutting. Thought maybe I heard singing when my mother took over and cut the grass edges near the pond rocks. The grass falling like a lover before her, once a tall patch, now a soft pallet, a laced mat, a rug of love and fiber in our yard. In her last life, my mother was a grass dancer. She encircled us, donning feathers and bells, head held high above the rest, something sacred and special in her steps as she danced for her people, for her children, for me. She knew the language of grass, knew the way one sings and stomps down that spring green for a season of gatherings, for a child to remember it, for a daughter to remember, free and clear. So thank you, everyone. The last poem that I want to read, and again, I'm so grateful, and I can't wait to hear everyone else read. So I rarely do this, but I'm going to read a poem in progress. And I was just on a panel, and we were talking about, you know, when a poem is done, you know, when it's not done, and a couple of other pieces. But also we were talking about how sometimes the poet's job is to testify. And I want to read this poem again. You know, Indigenous Day is Monday, formerly Columbus Day. And we have so many issues in Indian country that we're dealing with still: missing women, you know, our children's, you know, graves being unearthed, uncovered, Indigenous lands being encroached upon. There's so many issues, you know, where do you start? But I'm working on a couple of things that, you know, hopefully will be good. You know, I guess I'll say it like that. I'm working on some more poems, but I wanted to read this poem called Orange Shirt Medicine Poem. And last week, there's an organization called the Orange Shirt Organization, named after one of the children who was forced to go to boarding school. And when he got there, they took his orange shirt. And so that's the history, a very brief, abbreviated history, but also indicative of what happened to children when they got to those boarding schools. And the story is the same over and over and over again, because they were trying to kill the Indian and save the man, quote unquote, or kill the Indian and the child. And we know what happened. We know what happened. So this poem is called Orange Shirt Medicine Poem. And it will transform and change the next time I read it. For their long walk, their hidden bones, lands stolen, children taken, beds cold, for their water claimed, their hair cut, bodies beaten, language erased, names changed, regalia burned, ceremonies halted, lives gilded, for their dials crushed, for their sunrises perished, for their ghosts clinging, for their ghosts. For my great grandmother, peak full blood Delaware Cherokee, for her terrible memories undone, for her saffron heart, she tells me, call their names, call their nations, the Cherokee, Cowessess, Choctaw, Oneida, Metis, the Cree. She tells me, call their names, not just Indigenous, they belong to someone. Children belong to someone. This earth, that sky, these stars, call their names. They belong. And from the grave, they sing, make a new sound. They turn, our fires still burning, for our blankets still embedded with stars, for what will never return, for what cannot return, for what has to return. And I will remember grandmother. I will call their names. I will tell. I will tell. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful.
you so much, Shonda. That was so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. I hope you heard us. I hope you heard us clapping and cheering at the library. We tried to face the mic to the audience, but we were definitely a lot of snaps. And then yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And then that's really great. Thank you for sharing. So we're gonna go ahead and move on to our next poet of the afternoon, who's gonna be Ramiro Rodríguez. And I'm gonna go ahead and read. I'm gonna read his bio. Ramiro Rodríguez was born in in the Humboldt Park neighborhood of Chicago. Affected by the gang life, Ramiro served a 13-and-a-half-year prison sentence in the Illinois Department of Corrections. Ramiro made his transformation to becoming a published poet with a self-published chapbook titled Coming Home and a mentor to youth in many of the communities of Chicago and in the Northeast San Fernando Valley community of California. After his release from prison in 2010, Ramiro has stayed connected to his ancestral Desante and continues to follow the road of the Mexicayotl. I'm sorry, I mispronounced that. This road is where Ramiro has found true healing for himself, even as he struggles to becoming a better father of 3 and a grandfather of 5. Thank you. Welcome, Ramiro. And I'm sorry. How do you pronounce Mashika? Mashikayo? Oh, okay. It's a beautiful.
Yes. My name is Ramiro Rodríguez. I am from Chicago. I've been living here in the San Fernando Valley for about 7 years. So it is an honor to be here. I really want to thank Briana. And then also from where we live at is Catawba. And then in Chicago, we have Potawatomis, Ojibways, a lot of tribes actually. But those are some of the main tribes. And so again, so back to my bio. So I did do 13.5 years. The changes that I've made in my life is attributed. Poetry is a part of that. Also know who I am as a Mexica person, as an indigenous person of these lands. So just letting you know, my poems can be a little dark, but right away I'm good. I'm happy. I'm a positive person. So it's just, this is what poetry helps. It helps us to express ourselves in a good way. I was expressing myself before with a lot of violence. I hurt a lot of people, hurt my family, my community, myself. So poetry has helped me be able to, release a lot of that tension, that anger. Of course, there are a lot of wounds that can never be healed. It's a lot of trauma. It's ancestral. It's generational. It's all what we're dealing with. So I'm glad that poetry is a part of my life and helps me to express myself, and I don't have to hurt anyone. Okay, so this one's untitled. So we do have a cultural center, bookstore. My parents are co-founders. It's called Tia Chucha. They have a they have a program called the Young Warriors, and so this is a poem that I had dedicated to them a couple of years ago. Uh, and there's a great program. Myra is the creator of that program, and she's been doing really good with the young people that they're going through trying to figure out their own paths, and she's really helped a lot of them over the years and helped them find their own way and helped them find their potential. So this is an untitled poem. So here I go. Who are you to tell me how I am supposed to be? Who are you to tell me who I am supposed to be? My rage becomes my shield, a shield against the pain, the lies, the suffering. Yes, that, and as the bullets escape from its destructive solitude, I find peace in the blood, the screams, the destruction. You don't know my history. You don't know what's in my bones. You can't read my hurt in book. Any school teacher, read my poetry, hear my song, watch my dance. That's how you can know me. Yes, that crowbar is in my hands, blood dripping from his head, his body slipping. And yet you can still judge me, condemn me. And my grandma of me, hearing me, my voice echoing down through the 7 generations. Can you see this little boy clawing his way into adulthood? You look at me and shake your head. Tell the judge to lock me away forever. Cuffed and shackled, I hold my head high, look you in the eyes, and I shake my head. Your 500 years of atrocities, stolen lands, stolen dreams, imprisoned, alone, in despair. Quetzalcoatl finds me. Into my living nightmare, surrounded by my demons, I fall to my knees and yell, "Oh, Mateo!" 13 years later, I'm free. The metal doors close behind me. Don Atiu embraces me with his warmth. Don Ancin engulfs me with her love. So there's another poem I'm gonna read. It's called "Dancing Through a Beating." It was published in this anthology called Coil's Serpent, and it's yeah. So this was a poem that was published, and I was really honored to be a part of it. It's a lot of great poets. Oh, it's an amazing book. Everyone should get a copy and read it. Yeah. So this one's called, and like I said, this is I'm gonna danzante. So this is it's a poem. It's part of that, but it's also part of my experiences dealing with the police and what I've gone through. So it's called Dancing Through a Beating. I spin, I squat, move back, move forward, take a deep breath, and do it again. I spin, I squat, move back, move forward, take a deep breath, consumed by energies from the creator, drenched in sweat, the beat of the wet, the rattle of the sonaja, my body pushed beyond its limits, my mind focused, and with each movement, every step, I send my prayers to the creator, my ancestors, asking for guidance, for wisdom, for healing, for me, for my family, for my community. I spin, I squat, move back, move forward, take a deep breath. The police handcuff me, spin me around, make me squat on the floor. They move me back, they move me forward, and I take a deep breath with every punch that lands on my face. Consumed by their hate, I am drenched in my own blood. My heart beats fast, my bones rattle hard, and my body has gone way beyond its limits. Their minds are focused with each punch, every kick. There are no prayers for guidance, for wisdom, for healing. I am only left with pain, shame, humiliation. I spin, I squat, move back, move forward, take a deep breath. Who I was then, who I am now, who I will be is all marked by the preciseness of my ability to follow the grandfathers into that next realm. And on that journey, the beat of the wewet, my heart, the rattle of the sonaja, my bones will keep me from falling off the path of the Mishikayo. I dance through the beatings of life. I dance through the beatings of my inner demons. I dance through the beatings of my father's abandonment, the choices I have made in life, the degradation of the police. I dance through the beatings of my own transitions to becoming a strong and respected Mashika warrior, a warrior for peace, a warrior for love, for our young people going forward into the next 7 generations, giving them guidance, wisdom, healing as they make their own transitions on the path of the Mishikayo. So for them, for me, for my kids, for my family, don't unseen, ometeo, I spin, I squat, move back, move forward, take a deep breath, and do it again and again and again and again. So let's see this next one. So like I said, Chicago. I love saying it. I'm from Chicago. I love Chicago. But one thing we don't have mountains in Chicago. We have hills, so it's good being here. I love seeing all the mountains. And so when I was first starting to dance, we were traveling up north to like San Jose, Watsonville, Sacramento, and I loved seeing all the mountains and all the land. But we also know it's sad because we're also destroying those lands, right? It was mentioned, with the pipelines and all the toxic pollutants and everything. We're also consumers, so we do, we are really hurting our Mother Earth. So this is just a poem that I had written about that. So it's called "Forgiveness" from Tonantzin. Traveling through the lands of my ancestors, embracing their struggles, humbled by their teachings, I am minuscule in comparison to the energy of my grandmother, Tonantzin. The trees give me life, the wind gives me focus. In each direction I follow, my spirit is unmovable. Her arms chained to her heart, I fall to my knees and I ask her for forgiveness. My tears become a river, my pain becomes an ocean. I am lost in the insanity. The madness has transformed me, evolved me, mutated me into this. Forgive me, Tonantzin. Forgive me, my grandmother. Forgive me for what I have done, for what I do now, for what I will do tomorrow. I stand up. Her energy travels through my bones. My soul becomes balanced, and I continue traveling through the lands of my ancestors, embracing their history, acknowledging their struggle, humbled by their teachings. I am minuscule in comparison to the energy of my grandmother, Tonantzin, the energy of my grandfather, Wetonatyu, the energy of Ometeo. So this next poem is so okay. Again, I'm from Chicago, right? So poetry has always been a part of me. And when I was in the hood, I used to always carry a notebook, and I used to always write poetry. And when I was gang banging, when I was holding security, when I was dealing drugs, I always had a little notebook. And my guys, they never really tripped on it. Yeah, they'll make fun of me a little bit, but they were good about it. And honestly, a lot of it they really took to heart. So this is a poem that It's from a story from one of my homies that he told me about. Um, we were the gang that I was a part of, and just I joined. I'm Mexican. I love being Mexican, but I joined the Puerto Rican gang. I was living in a Puerto Rican neighborhood, but like I said, I'm Mexican, so my nickname in the streets was Mexico. And I let them know, look, I love Puerto Ricans. My sons have Puerto Rican, but look, man, I'm Mexican, and I had to let them know that, right? But so the gang that I was a part of was very small, and we used to fight a lot of other different gangs. And so this is just a start, and so I guess there was a situation that happened where it was three of us. We got locked up, and we were surrounded by a lot of our enemies in the bullpen. And I probably was on drugs and everything, so I don't remember it. But my homie remembers it clearly. And I'm sitting on the bench and I'm writing a poem. Paying attention. My homies are trying to tell me, "Hey, look, man, we're about to get into this fight." And and so then I guess I just stood up and I read this poem. And he said, and he memorized it. It was a small little poem, but he memorized it. And he just told me, man, like that poem, like they shut them up. Like they didn't expect it. They expected a fight. Expected this. Probably gonna whoop our. It was like 20 dudes. They're probably gonna whoop our butts, um, but yeah, he said they just turned around. Bother with us after that poem. I wish I could remember what that poem was. He memorized it. He tells me about it, and I still don't even memorize it. But so I wrote a poem about that story through his words and how he explained it to me. We hold on to our afflicted lives like a badge of honor. Hermanos por vida, young, naive, full of hope, day in, day out, on the block, away from the block, claiming the block. Then we get caught up on the block, entering a new stage, a new world, a new beginning. The smells is what hit us first. The despair on these lonely faces. All around are mirrors, reflections of ourselves. We entered this cage with pride and strength, and those reflections become demons, anger spewing out of their pores, surrounding us with hate, a hate born from struggle and strife. Mind of insanity. The words become worlds, the syllables become planets, the letters become my universe. Nothing else exists. Mexico, Mexico, get up, pay attention, look around you. I don't listen, can't stop. Addicted to my sorrow, expressed through these verses that have shined a light on the souls of every man in that cage. Every scar, every wrinkle, every indentation has a story. We are a walking library of battle and fatigue. The men, the tension rises, they come closer. Mi hermanos are ready, fists clenched. This is nothing new. For months, we have been battling every gang on every block. Numbers dwindled down to just a few with hearts of steel. I finished. Listen to what I wrote. Quetzalcoatl enters my body, and the words become the wind. A self-reflection of a boy fighting to become a man. We have created our own self-loathing. The words reverberate through every spirit. Quetzalcoatl resurrects our hearts. The blackness disappears. God's pain becomes self-love, and the men withdraw. My poem becomes a shield against who we don't want to be. My poem becomes a blanket that comforts the boy, and in his dreams, a man emerges. For one brief moment, we all are Quetzalcoatl. I still have time to read more? Yeah. One more? Okay, so you know what? So let me get into gonna be three smaller ones. Because I like I said, they're dark. My poems can be dark, but these are a little bit, some have some little bit of, I don't know what to say happiness, but positivity maybe. So it was part of a creative writing class. We have we do have a program called From Trauma to Transformation. Teachers and artists, and they go into the juvenile prison system, they go into the adult prison system, the men and women's, halfway houses. So I had an opportunity to assist one of the teachers who, Kasasi, who teaches one of the creative writing programs, and he was doing in one of the halfway houses. So he has had these prompts, and so there's just these three small poems that I had written through the prompts because I was writing with the guys too. So here it goes. This is called "The Presence of Your Own Nobility." My nobility comes in waves, leaving behind a trail of blood. The creative energy inside every strain of my DNA. Rooted in hate, I am now embraced by a community that at one time condemned me. And then there's another one. This one's called Honor. My honesty is a lie. Because if my truth was revealed, I would plunge this earth into a war of upheaval, unravel people's dreams, destroying their hopes. My honesty has been my survival. And it's in those lies when true honor emerges. So this other one is called Purpose. And I want to end with this one because it's good for everybody to know that we do have a purpose in this world, in this life. You know, we are part of this land. We are native peoples. They try to tell us all kinds of other things about who we are, and we're beautiful people. We have a beautiful culture, and we just have to always remember that, and try to really uplift each other and just stay in a good way. This one's called Purpose. Trauma and oppression gave a little boy a purpose of death and destruction. Poetry and native traditions brought him out of that nightmare. Humiliated, belittled, shamed, a war was brewing inside of him. He battled through the overdoses, brothers and sisters dying, gentrification taking over his neighborhood. He fought and fought, bloodied and beaten down. Yet, through that fog of despair, that little boy never lost hope in finding that purpose that will enlighten his soul. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Ramiro, for reading. Yes, snaps. Thank you. So we're gonna go ahead and move along to our next poet of the afternoon, Briana. Give a big shout out to Briana because she also helped organize this reading. And she's the event coordinator for the Sims Library of Poetry, and she's volunteering. So we really appreciate all the help that she's given us in putting together not only this reading but a few other readings that we've had in the last few weeks. And none of this would have really been possible without Briana. So thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and read her bio. Briana Muñoz is a poet from Southern California and an Indigenous Mexica Descente. She's the author of Loose Lips, a poetry collection published by Prickly Pear Publishing, and of Everything is Returned to the Soil, published by Flower Song Press. Her work has been published in the Dry Land Literary Journal, in Boundless, the Anthology of the Rio Grande Valley International Poetry Festival, and the Oakland Arts Review, the Bravura Literary Journal, among others. Here is Briana.
Thank you, Karo. Thank you for hosting. Karo is also a poet and a librarian of Sims Library, so thank you. It is really a pleasure to be reading. in the space. Thank you, Hiram Sims, and just everyone that makes this library run and function, and provide services for the community. Um, it's also just an honor to be reading with these, fellow poets. Ramiro mentioned earlier that we are both, we're in the same dance, Calpuli. We do Indigenous Mexica dancing in East LA. Our group is online watching as they're actually working on regalias for some of the dancers right now. But as we were putting this event together, and we do know this, but it it's a little challenging because there aren't as many voices. Oh, cool. Yeah, there aren't as many indigenous voices. Communities, but and if there are indigenous voices, writing, they aren't being amplified. So I really encourage you all to read them, to research them, to support them financially, to teach them in your classrooms. I always like to encourage people to decolonize your bookshelves. In school, we're taught a lot of poets that aren't from these communities of color. So really, I think to challenge yourself to read, other voices. Okay. I wrote this poem. It's titled How to Reimagine America for an anthology by Vagabond. And I think you might be in that too, right? Yeah. A lot of LA poets and just poets. I didn't, yeah, so I'll just read that. How to Reimagine America. Turn back to its origins: earth, water, wind, and fire. Call it by its name, Turtle Island. Ask for consent. Listen to its trees and its bird songs, and realize that there are many Americas: North, Central, and South America, and that simultaneously we are one America. Rid it of its pipelines and its oil train terminals. Undress it like you do your lover in hushed bedrooms. Start at its colonial border wall. Watch it slowly bring it down like a pair of Victoria's Secret panties. Then move your attention to its prison systems. Better yet, uncage everyone. Remove its monuments of white supremacy, like we're having a store closing sale. Replace them with more trees. Mhm. I'm gonna take this off. So, Karo and we mentioned the pipelines, right? And everyone that these aren't just indigenous struggles. These are this is all water that's being affected, and really we're all one people. So, yeah, I think we should just acknowledge that. If I were to turn myself into a poem, if I were to turn myself into a poem, I'd give myself a pair of legs so that I could travel to Santiago, Chile, the place of Neruda's death, and backpack to Borges's Buenos Aires. If I were to turn myself into a poem, I'd bring with me in my transformation all of the heartache, the way my mother's gentle body laid atop a pull-out couch next to dad's hospital bed nightly, or the way my father never climbed back into his leather-worked saddles. I'd bring with me everything I still have not allowed my heart to write about. If I were to turn myself into a poem, I'd be an erotic poem, slithering around the neck, the fingertips, and into the optic nerve of the reader. They would shut their door to safely consume me as a poem. If I were to turn myself into a poem, my format would consist of hilltops and flatlands, and it appealed to all five senses. In reading the poem, you'd pick up notes of sin and sacred sage. If I were to turn myself into a poem, I would flow like the Snake River of the Pacific Northwest. I'd move sly and easy. The reader would close their eyes and put their hands on the waist of the poem, dance and wrestle and even tongue kiss the poem. If I were to transform myself into a poem, I would unlearn the language of all white male poets taught to me in grade school. Instead, I would be a Mother Earth poem, a sacred soil poem, a floricanto poem. If I were to turn myself into a poem, that poem better be no saint. That poem would be a chain smoker playing dominoes in back alleys. That poem would have a thick accent like Theo Chewy and a gut from pork chicharron dishes. If I were to turn myself into a poem, I'd be a melting pot of all poems. 21st century poems, poems that I've read and reread and involuntarily released the gas. Poems that I did of poems that I read and shouted to the page, "Oh, you clever, clever bastard." And the poems of all the poets we have lost. And in my poem, in my body of a poem, they resurrect and reincarnate as poets, clinking glasses of champagne amongst library shelves and of libraries and bookshelves. Thank you. So I released my second full-length poetry book. It's a bilingual collection titled Everything is Returned to the Soil, published by Flower Song Press. And they are really like just putting out a bunch of really talented poets, specifically from people of color. So I would encourage you to check them out. This is titled Ancestral Wounds. I am an empath, a small body housing overwhelming amounts of energy escaped from other homes. I am the grief my grandmother never released. I am decades of women gathered around kitchens, burnt fingertips, but a poor cook out of rebellion. I am my own hurts, clothed around ankles like serpentine shackles. I am my father and my mother and their father and their mother, scarred of slapped wrists for speaking the Spanish language in El Paso during the mid-30s, heavy, weighed down by cries of ancestors. Somehow I am the colonized and the colonizer from birth. I am a dance of praise, a dance of thanks, a dance for independence, drumbeat of resilience. I am a horse on hind legs. I am a horse whipped, and the nourishment the horse consumes. I am an empath, a small body housing overwhelming amounts of energy escaped from other homes. Thank you guys. So, I'm just gonna read two more. Somewhere here. This is titled Tongue Your Truths. It is you must shout them. You must sing them into sky and storm and sow them into soil to create showers of lightning bolts that electrocute epiphany into the chests of those around you. Speak them in a way that others begin to memorize them, in a way that others compare your truths to their truths. Spit out hesitation and doubt like a wet loogie. You must analyze them under a microscope, analyze them from the four directions and beyond. Tlawislampa, Huitzlampa, Siwitlampa, and Mictlampa. Purge them from soul in languages understood by all, tongued into dialect, danced into visual arts. Your truth should be exhausted, wrestled every day, held in a chokehold, dehydrated, performed like pageant queens or show ponies, filing claims to HR for exploitation. Ridden like burros at border towns, realized during hot baths or meditation. Your truths should be sharp like the edges of the fenced wire that skating scoundrels hop over and attempt to outrun the cops. Your truths should never be muffled, should never be held under tongue to keep the boat from rocking. Your truth should wreak havoc against the narrow minded and obsolete. Should know no color or sex or class or age. Your truth should be jarred and opened on your difficult days like ladybugs, penned aggressively, carved into bathroom while swished from right cheek to left cheek like red wine. Your truth should never sell out. Your truths should be rooted beneath flesh, under rib, but they should grow and extend like the breath of Abuelita's pomegranate tree and the receding and crashing of the saltwater sea. Your truths should exist, resist, and long live. Thank you guys. So I think Iván and Ramiro, we both are poems so far that mention Tonantzin. And for those of you who aren't aware, Tonantzin means Mother Earth. So that's a reoccurring theme. I also wanted to mention the way that, so Ramiro and I belong to the same dance group. And we had been dancing together for a couple months, I'd say. And one day I think I gifted a book to my teachers, and he like noticed, and so I said, oh well, I'm a poet, I was gifting them a book. And then he goes, I'm a poet. And like we both had no idea that we were both poets. So then of course he says, like, do you know Luis J. Rodríguez? And like, that's my dad. So that was our introduction into the poetry world of each other. This is titled Tonantzin, and this will be my last poem. Feel the earth. Take your hands to her chest. Dig your fingertips under soil slightly, just enough to connect. Abre tu corazón under Tonantzintli. Let them guide you. Feel the rain, anoint your skin. In doing this, you will understand that you are never alone. Thank you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Briana. Thank you, Briana. Wow, I'm just so like filled right now with all of this poetry. It's so, whew, wow. Thank you so much, everyone who has read so far. And we have one final poet for all of you, Luis J. Rodríguez. We're really super excited to see you at the library. He is a novelist, memoirist, short story writer, children book writer, essayist, as well as a community and urban peace activist, mentor, healer, youth and arts advocate, husband, father, grandfather, and great grandfather. Luis served as the official poet laureate of Los Angeles from 2014 to 2016. Woo! He has 16 books in all genres, including the La Vida Loca, Gang Days in LA. His latest memoir is a sequel, It Calls You Back, an odyssey through love, addiction, revolutions, and healing. His latest poetry book is Borrowed Bones from In 2020, Seven Stories Press released his first book of essays, From Our Land to Our Land, Essays, Journeys, and Imaginings from a Native Chicanx writer. Luis is founding editor of Tia Chucha Press now for over 30 years and co-founder of Tia Chucha's Central Cultural and Bookstore in. Let's welcome Luis J. Rodríguez. Thank you.
This is great. This is wonderful. I'm gonna take my mask off. I love poetry, and you guys are just amazing. All of you, amazing. So I'm not gonna share a few things. I do have a book to sell if anybody's interested, because for poets, you don't get a lot of pay for what we do. So if you buy our books, that'd be great. Be good. And so I do have. I want to share something from my essay book because in the indigenous situation that we face, there is a struggle about whether Mexicans are indigenous. You know that. Of course, in the communities, nobody's arguing, nobody's debating it. We all know we do dance, we do all kinds of things, but there is, and it's basically the academic community, more or less, which doesn't mean they're bad. It just means that some people do question it. I find it to be very strange because I think that means you buy into the colonial mindset. You buy into borders. You buy into things that were made up, completely fabricated. And I know they're big, and I know that I have a passport. I can't go around the world without a passport. I'm a U.S. citizen. I get it, but it's all made up nonsense. You understand what I'm saying? And yet we fall into it. And I think that that's the sad thing about us, that we do fall into these traps. I'm indigenous to this land. I don't have to argue for it. Nobody has to give me a card. I don't have to be recognized by any government. Recognizes me, recognizes you. That's what's important. And it's a goofy ass topic, but I want I wanted to read you something that I wrote about this, and it was about my mother is linked to the Raramuri. People know the Tarahumara in Chihuahua. It's boarding schools. My grandmother and great grandmother were starving in the Sierra Tarahumara in the early last century, and they went down to Chihuahua City. They had planned to come back. They never got back. They got kidnapped by the Catholic Church. And I know when I tell people that, they don't understand that's what happened. Now they were starving. They needed food. Here's food. They keep them there. And then pretty soon they start giving you addresses. And then they dress differently. And then they start telling you you can't use your language. And then they say, that name you have is not your name. We're going to give you another name. That's what happened to my grandmother and great grandmother. So my mother was born in the ghetto of Chihuahua City called La Tarahumara. It's a ghetto of Native peoples. She was born there. She does not know her tradition. She does not know her language. She knows she's Tarahumara, but you know what I'm saying? She grew up under the Catholic, and that's all she knows. And one thing you should know, I'm going to read you a poem about her in a bit, but I want to just share this one thing. One thing you should know, well, let me read you this one thing. And it's just a link to why I think this is important. I had gone to San Bernardino and spoke there, Valley Union College, and a white guy was there screaming and yelling, big buff white guy screaming, yelling, and all the Mexicans coming. There's 400 people showed up, mostly brown people. He was screaming, you don't belong here. It's not your country, all this kind of stuff. Some people wanted to jump him. You know how it is, And they came up to me and said, hey, man, let's jump this dude. I go, hey, man. My son was there. No, just kidding. No, I said, no, I don't want to jump him. In fact, I'm going to invite him to come in. People thought it was crazy. I said, no, I'm going to invite him to come in. I ain't scared or worried about any of that stuff. Let him come in. And sure enough, he shows up. He's in the back. And I start telling them, and I tell the story. Just before from Ciudad Juárez, Chihuahua, Mexico, to El Paso, Texas. The year was 1954. I'm a, quote, anchor baby. And so what? Migrants from Europe included many pregnant women lining up at Ellis Island, some ready to burst. More than 350 babies were born there because of that a U.S.-born child helped to petition for residency and later citizenship, demeaning anyone for making the best case they can for themselves is ridiculous. More notably, the Chihuahuan Desert cuts a large swath through the U.S. Southwest and northern Mexico. The Raramuri have resided in the Chihuahua Desert for at least 10,000 years, forever. Way before the Spanish, the Portuguese, the English, or French, before borders, before legal documents. El Paso is within the confines of this desert, which intersects two nations and several states. When my mother gave birth to me across the border, we went from our land to our land. If I do, that's what I tell them, you know. And again, you know, people say, well, okay, indigenous people, do other people not belong here? Hey, man, we all belong. You understand? Mother Earth could give a hoot. We all belong. Every part of the earth belongs to us, and we belong any part of this planet. You understand? Other people have created these prison states called nations, and that's something that can be addressed. I do want to say a poem to my mother because, again, she did this beautiful thing of telling me, somos tarahumara. A lot of Mexicans don't say that. You know they're indigenous, but they don't tell the people. It's very rare. And most Mexicans, at least the ones where I was growing up, if you were darker, you know, it is the best como un indio. It is un indio, and that's usually a put down. I do want to point out, though, that Mexico is mostly indigenous. There's still 25 million actual speaking indigenous people. There's also a very important root, the African root that we constantly forget in Mexico. It is very big and very important. It's in my family. And so I just want to make sure that recognize that we know that. That's why I love Shonda Buchanan, who, by the way, is, I've done a lot of ceremony with her, and she's a sister in our Turtle Lodge. But we are. Anyway, my mother was very sickly when she was growing up, and very sickly when she got to LA. I was 2 years old when we ended up in Watts, which is not far. East Side, North Valley guy thing. But I started here on South Central in Watts, and she was very sickly because in her early 20s, she had no teeth. They all had rotten. She had diabetes. She had thyroid problems. She had all kinds of problems, including this one. And so this poem is called Heavy Blue Veins, Watts, 1959. Heavy blue veins streak across my mother's legs. Some of them bunched up into dark lumps at her ankles. Mama periodically bleeds them to relieve the pain. She carefully cuts the engorged veins with a razor and drains them into a porcelain-like metal pail called a tina. I'm small, and all I remember are dreams of blood. Me drowning in Red Sea, blood on sheets on the walls, splashing against the white pail and streams out of my mother's ankle. But they aren't dreams. It is my birthed a memory, my mother, my blood by the side of the bed, me on the covers and her slicing into a black vein and filling the pail into some dark, forbidding red nightmare, which never stops coming, never stops pouring this memory of mama and blood and Watts. And my son doesn't know, I didn't mention, but California, because I worked at the Bethlehem steel plant. They used to be on Slauson, and you're too young, don't know. All this industry used to be here. It's all gone. I worked, most of them. I worked at the Exide Technologies, that lead plant that came down. I worked there. It used to be called National Lead. It's been dealing with lead since the 1920s and poisoning whole communities, Boyle Heights and Southeast LA. And I worked there. I worked in all this industry, and he was born when I was working at Bethlehem Steel. And so, but we lived in Florence. We lived down the street. Keep going, Florence. We lived in Florencia. And then we went to Watts, back to Watts, where my daughter was born. So I have, again, some South Side connections. I thought that I would read a poem because we're into the indigenous here, right? And this poem, it's I got Pachamama is the word they use for Tonatsi. Same thing, the same energy. And I've had great relationships with indigenous people all over the Americas, which is beautiful. I went beyond the borders. Of course, with the Lakota, I've been Pine Ridge and Ceremony Vision Quest. I've also got adopted by a Dene elder and his wife out of the Navajo reservation. And we've been doing ceremony there for almost 25 years. My son got to finally meet him and connect with them a few years ago. And but I also went to Mexico, of course, went back. I went to the Raramuri. I went to the Copper Canyon, spent time with them. I went among the Zapotecos in Oaxaca. I went among the Pipil of El Salvador, Mayans in southern Mexico, as well as in Guatemala. And I ended up going to the Quechua, where I did ceremony. We did a lot of ceremony. So we ended up in Machu Picchu, but we didn't go to Machu Picchu as tourists. You understand what I'm saying? And so, as you know, a lot of these sacred ruins, for us sacred, are just for tourists. And it's against the law to do ceremony there. I'm sure you might be aware. If you're not, it's certain places are against the law. In Machu Picchu, you cannot do indigenous ceremonies. So we snuck it in. We had this great elder from Iquitos in Peru, Quechua woman, who says, we'll do ceremony among the tourists, and they wouldn't even know what we're doing. We had copal, we had all kinds of things. We were doing talks and prayers, and we were doing ceremony there, and they didn't know what it was, and we didn't make a big deal about it. We were just there. But let me read you the poem of Machu Picchu. It was quite an amazing, beautiful experience. And it's called, I'm sorry, take off my glasses. When you get older, you don't even know if to put your glasses on, take them off, what's going on. So this is called, this is called Machu Picchu, or What I Should Have Become When the Ancient Stone Walls and the Clouded Heights Named My Blood. Long title, sorry. Memories of childhood rise up like a twisted vine, mocking the granite sinews of this adult body and the solid layers of lies that have become my face, demanding a lightness of foot and of fears as antidotes to the round-bellied nightcrawler I've succumbed to, this clown and tattooed skin, a priest without prayers, the wrinkled figure and soggy coat on a scorched plain. Fire awakens me, although I'm cold inside, surrounded by carcasses of embattled loves and blistered stories, always ending with betrayals and dismissals, with the turning away of the most emblazoned eye. They are the settled, unholy ingredients in the bottled angst I've traded on street corners, poetry bars, living room arguments, and between the multi-tracked songs that singe the cluttered paths of my lunacies. I can't hide, I can't run. The runes speak to me in whispered cadences with scrolled breath, blurting out curative threats, words that bob and weave in a rushing mad river, ripping the flesh of cruel invectives, dressing me like a worried mother, a tired frog outside my window, while laying me down on the ground, crawling with spiders and my best intentions. I learned to live on chicken and vegetable soups, long walks, coca leaves inside my cheeks, chicha morada, the way the natives did for thousands and thousands of years, with few calories, yet still energized, awake, strong. And even the wooded hills and high altitudes are less formidable, less monstrous, more like brothers, like leaves, like a welcoming breeze. Machu Picchu, you were always in my crowded dreams, in the faded colors of my worn clothes, on the folds near my eyes, always a tree branch to cling to, a father when my own father ate the hearts of his children, as a brother in the harrowing nights of my downtowns, even when I had never seen you. I'm here, and I sense this open citadel help shape my hands, my mouth, the many constants of my inconsistencies, and whatever death melody I played but never died to. A place, an embrace, a cauldron of history I never knew I had. Machu Picchu survived the thousands from my steps to seal this pact, to communicate what winds and tortured rain cannot do, as a meditation in stone, moss, and cloud, with 6-inch colibri. I mean, they were big hummingbirds, and satin flower to accompany me, climbing the heights of this carved womb on a grinning mountain to the depths of my own negations and hypocrisies, to whatever song suggests my slow and languid tearing out of my skin. Yeah, the tears come from carry a lot of pain when you go through the things that even Ramiro talks about. And I don't always write about this part, but I'm going to read you a poem. I was a heroin addict for 7 years. It's a long time ago. I mean, it's almost like another world, but I drank for 20 years on top of it, which was pretty bad. But when Always Running came out 28 years ago, recovered. I've been on the recovery path for 28 years, and it's been working. And I don't write too much about heroin. It's in my memoir. I got one or two other poems, but I thought I would write this poem so that I could summarize why. I have, unfortunately, a granddaughter, who's on crystal meth, and I understand fentanyl. She's been at it for about 6 years, I think. She's in the street. We don't know where she's at. She's missing in action, as she says. We love her. She's got a lot of resources. She's turned away from us right now. We have hope and love for her. She's 27 years old. Just saw a recent picture of her because I have not seen her in years. We can't find her. We try to look for her. She's in Illinois and Ohio, Wisconsin, and all over the place. We can't find her. She's 27, but she looks like she's in her 40s. And so it's a very heartbreaking thing. And so to write about my own addiction, because I hate to see my granddaughter and that he was in that world, but he got out of it too. And so it's something you don't want to keep carrying. And so I wrote this called The Peace of Death and Life, about heroin. One thing you'll know is that I used to love listening to jazz growing up, especially on heroin. It's not a comment on jazz, it's more about me. Oh my gosh, that was my playing over and over again, so it's not a comment on him or anything, it's just more about, again, about me. This is called The Peace of Death and Life. Heroin's soundtrack, bitches brew. Trumpets like trains squealing around a bend. The rainwater murmurs along a concrete river, skulls whispering you to sleep. Pain awash and glows from the tip of the toes through legs, streaming through the pit of his stomach, coloring the whole body in hazy blue wash. Miles knew the chords to blow. I chipped to soften the edge when things got bad. When it did, I didn't want to be around anyone. Among my own edit and score, loitering inside my own high and my own morose pose. Yet Michaela and homie Sharky often joined, even a high note or two, and strangers as raindrops fell. I recall the headstones of Evergreen Cemetery, where I leaned back to nod and scribble in torn pieces of paper, poems tracked with collapsed veins. I recall my small garage room with no running water or heat, and feeling the peace of death cover me as a white sheet in my collapse. The shadows felt so compelling. Even when I stopped breathing and homeboys forced me up, ice and pits and groin, milk injected to unsing the song. To quit, I had to accept never-ending ache. Numbness only meant demise. Now constant pain is constant reminder, a holy surrender. When the pain's gone, so am I. So I think, I can keep reading a lot of poems, but I think I want to end with this last poem. This has been a great afternoon. Love you all, love poetry, love all the people that are here. We got to have more poetry. So thank you, Sims, Library of Poetry. Thank you for making this happen. And hopefully we can come back, do more things. We need more places like this. And you're also welcome, of course, to come to the Chuchas. I'd like to consider it a sister organization to the library here. We have a bookstore, we have our own press, we have our workshops, we have all kinds of things. We've expanded to a new place. It's 3 times bigger than it was before. And November 13th, if all goes well, we plan to have a grand opening. So you're all welcome. Just look on our website, theachucha.org. We also to bring as donations. One of them is the late great Quiché Mayan poet Humberto Acabal. We did his poetry this year. It's called "In the Courtyard of the Moon." Beautiful poems. We need to get them out. Indigenous poetry in the Rio. So anyway, I just wanted to say that. I'm gonna just end with a poem. I did a lot of work in prisons and juvenile halls. I think it's my way of giving back because I went through the gang life, the heroin, the homelessness, and everything. I was in and out of jails and everything, but I survived. I didn't do the time that my son did. I didn't do the state time. I did get to adult facilities and got convicted, but I was able to get out. By the time I was 18, 19, I was pretty much done. And then at 20, when he was born, I never went back. I promised him and my daughter, I'm never going back to La Vida Loca. And I've kept that promise all these years. And part of the pain, of course, is seeing my son go through all that, seeing him go through that, going to prison, but he's actually come out very strong. So yes, he's very strong poet, danzante. And but I went back to prisons and I started doing creative writing workshops at Chino Prison. And I just finished creative writing workshops at Lancaster Prison, where I was there for almost 13 years. Little hiatus in between, but I was been there for 13 years. And I also do one-time poetry readings, talks, and I've done healing circles. He came to me. We got him at San Quentin to permission of the warden to come to do 2 days of healing circles with me at San Quentin. So it's really important work. Trauma transformation is a continuation of that work. We bring artists, poets, and theater people into the institutions. And so I want to read a poem that I wrote based on the guys and women of the prison system, some of them who are now released. And of course, many of them suffered during the COVID. As you know, it was terrible what the prison system did. I'm also an abolitionist. We don't need no more caged people. We don't need no more caged people on the border. We don't need no more caged people anywhere. And I agree with that. And I've been fighting that. People have asked me, why do you go into prisons then? I said, because they're still human beings and we need to be there and they need to connect and we need to connect and give them whatever tools they need so that they can free themselves. So that's why I do it. But so this is called Make a Poem Cry. And it's based on a line of poetry by one of my favorite poets in the prison. By the way, I actually did an anthology. I got one or two of them in the back, Make a Poem Cry, of the writings from my class. And it was co-edited by myself, but also Kenneth E. Harmon, who did 38 years in the California prison system, who's now been out. So let me read you this poem. It's from a line from this great, beautiful, amazing poet from Oakland named Jimmy McMillan. And the line is, I can't see him coming from my eye, so I had to make this poem cry. You can chain the body, the face, the eyes, the way hands move coarsely over cement or deftly on tattooed skin with needle. You can cage the withered membrane, the withered dream, the way razor wire shouts, yells, and batons can wither spirit. But how can you imprison a poem? How can a melody be locked up, locked down? Yes, even caged birds sing, even grass sprouts through asphalt, even a flower blooms in a desert. And the gardens of trauma we call the incarcerated can also spring with the vitality of a deep thought and emotion buried beneath the facades, deep as rage, deep as grief, the grief beneath all rages. The blood of such poems, songs, emotions, thoughts, dances are what flow in all art, stages, films, books. The keys to liberation are in the heart, in the mind, behind the cranial sky. The imagination is boundless, the inexhaustible in any imprisoned system. And remember, we are all in some kind of prison. If only the contrived freedom society professes can flow from such water. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Lacho Kamati. Muchas gracias. Thank you all.
Ooh, wow. Thank you so much. Thank you, all the poets. Ivan, Shonda, Briana, Ramiro, and Luis. You all took me on a poetic journey. And I'm so happy I was able to go on it. So thank you all so much for sharing your poetry with us. I just wanted to invite everybody on Zoom to unmute and just give everyone a hand. If you want to turn your cameras on, that'd be cool too, because we can see the library. So yeah, if y'all want to go shout out.
Woo! Clap, clap, clap.
Say a few words.
First, I just want to thank all the poets who read. It was just fantastic to hear everybody. Like, you're not just reading poems, you're sharing knowledge. And I think that's one thing that I want to communicate that I learned a lot. You know, I heard words I never heard before, right? Tonan scene, like, I never heard that before. You know, like, it's right? We'd be like Crenshaw and Florence all day long, but you don't know what it was before it was Crenshaw, before it was Florence. So I think this, like, this knowledge that you all are giving us is really incredible. So I just want to thank you for educating us, you know, which is something that should happen in a library, right? You know, we should learn. So I also want to uh, thank Briana Muñoz for organizing this event, and for Karo for helping out as well. Briana is doing work. Like, you know, these are people who are like they're volunteering, but they're working so hard, you know, like, to create uh programming. And I just want to just talk a little bit about what it means to work together and what happens when you work together. I think our presence here is the result of these poets working together, right? Individually, you might have a poem. Together, you have a reading. You know, the poems together make a book, right? Like, these are all the result of people working together. When the library started, you know, I had about, you know, 300 of poetry. There are 6,200 books of poetry on the shelf, because, you know, not, and literally 90% of these books are donated by poets. You know, like, poets gave 10 books, 20 books, you know, like, gave a little money. Like, poets pay for the electricity, for the water. Poets vacuum the floor. Poets set out the chairs. So when poets work together, we can have what we have, you know, and can have even more. It can have even more than we have. So I'm especially proud of the work that we are doing together. Uh, I just want to give a shout out to the CLI students in the house. Anybody from my clique in here? Yeah. So these CLI students, like, they put in work, and, like, together we built this library. One of my heroes is Booker T. Washington. Booker T. Washington, when he was given Tuskegee University, he thought when he showed up it was going to be like a college. It was 100 acres of farmland. There was nothing there. But he was like, I can see it. And him and his students worked together. And not only did they build every building on the campus, but they had to make the bricks to make the buildings. And every student went to class for 4 hours in the daytime and then built buildings in the afternoon. And so this is one of my heroes, right? What he showed me is, like, you and your students working together, you can make anything. So, you know, like, this library is a result of the CLI students working together, the students, the alumni putting in work, putting in together so that we can have what we have. You know, like, the first public library in this country we have a campaign called the 44 campaign. And, you know, it's about people working together to keep this space open. And so people donate $44 a month to keep the library running, predominantly as poets put it in together. So we did that because Benjamin Franklin and wanting to create the first public library, he got a bunch of his homies together and they all put in 44 shillings. And that's how they created the first public library in this country. And so, so we're doing it the same way, keeping the library open. So I invite you to, contribute what you can, just like these poets contributed their poems tonight. Whatever it is that you are able to contribute, the library itself is, the result of much contribution together. Last thing I just want to say is that it's a real blessing to just see you in the library physically. When we, it was probably a year and some change and 3 months ago that we sort of finished the space, but last October, we had books, we had carpet, we had chairs, but it was right. So I was literally sat in a chair in the corner, is this ever going to be filled with people reading their poetry? And so to see you all in here and to hear you reading poetry, it is a dream come true. So I'm blessed to see that dream. And so if you walked in, there's a mural outside of Langston Hughes's poem. But to close it out, I just want to recite a poem of his from his 1926 book, The Weary Blues, which we have a copy of from 1927 in the special collections section. And so just make sure you look at it on the way out. But the poem says, hold fast to dreams, for when dreams die, life is a broken winged bird that cannot fly. Hold fast to dreams, for when dreams go, life is a barren field frozen in snow. Thank you all for a great night. Thank you for coming. Stick around, hang around, walk around, look at stuff, have a seat outside, and I'll turn it back over to Karo.
Just one last thing I forgot to mention is we have a used book sale outside happening right now. The books are like $2, or really, if you want to give us $1, that's fine too. But $2 is our asking price. And they're just books that were donated to us that were not poetry, and we only accept poetry books. And so we have a lot of non-poetry books that we're trying to, give out to the community so we have more space in our library. And there's also cookies outside, thanks to Tommy. So yeah. And then also Luisa's books are out there as well. So feel free to browse the library as well. Okay, thank you, everybody.